The title of this video is Why You Feel Drained and Exhausted. Be on the alert for energy vampires. Have you ever left a conversation or meeting with a person feeling inexplicably drained, depleted, or even physically and emotionally exhausted? If so, you probably encountered an energy vampire. These individuals are far more common than you might think, and their influence can have a profound impact on your health and well-being. An energy vampire is someone who unconsciously absorbs the energy of those around them to fuel their own emotional needs. And most of them do this unconsciously. In fact, it's somewhat automatic for them as they absorb some of the life force energy from people that they're interacting with. So these individuals actually feed off of your emotional or psychic energy, and often without them even realizing it. Recognizing and addressing energy vampires in your life is vital for understanding people that you interact with so you can protect yourself emotionally and your well-being and your energy so that you can not feel depleted from your energy reserve. The energy vampires usually act out of some deep-seated wound or emotional pain. And while their actions may not be malicious, the impact that they can have on you can be quite profound. So they could be clingy. They could want to touch you and hug you. They want to love to tell you stories and go on and on about them and how they've been victimized and hurt and how life has been tough for them. Or they may be the type that wants to persuade you to their beliefs and their way of thinking. The results of encountering an energy vampire goes well beyond physical fatigue. It can affect your mental, emotional, and even your spiritual state. It can affect your moods, your opinions, and even your beliefs. These people form connections to you that can continue affecting you and draining you even after you're no longer with them. Who are these energy vampires? Energy vampires can be anyone in your life. It could be your close friends, even your family members, certainly romantic partners, colleagues, even your children. Those are just the obvious ones. They often want to be around you, and that stems from your being empathetic and caring, qualities that make you a source of comfort and healing for them. Their attraction to you is most usually not malicious. It comes from an unconscious attempt to heal or process their own inner wound. And energy vampires frequently develop these traits due to childhood experiences when maybe they were neglected or they were abused. And their unresolved abuse and trauma leads them to seek others who exude a balance and a warmth. And they see these people as a source of comfort and energy. But unfortunately, this dynamic can leave you emotionally and physically drained and exhausted and confused and ungrounded and spacey and a lot of other symptoms. A less common or less obvious type of energy vampire are those you think you're having a normal conversation with, maybe just shaking their hand and meeting them and talking with them about some mundane topics. Yes, even casual connections can create a subtle energy transfer. All subtle energy has programming in it. What do I mean by subtle energy? I refer to this as thought forms, and you might think of them as memories, but they're actually more than just memories. They're memories with conclusions and beliefs that you come to after talking with someone. And in some cases, you pick up emotional charges from them. These thought forms can remain with you altering your moods, and sucking up your energy, sometimes for days or even weeks after the interaction. Now, here are some signs that you may have encountered an energy vampire. One, you feel triggered or emotionally depleted after you spend some time with them. Two, you might have some physical symptoms such as fatigue or headaches or body aches that you didn't have before. And these arise following an interaction with the person. Three, you notice a sense of irritability or dread or anxiety or sadness after you've been engaging with them. I think I could sum it up by saying that essentially anytime you feel or think differently after talking with someone, this is a good indication that you have acquired some subtle energy programs from the other person, which then utilize your life force energy to sustain the new symptoms and to continue feeding energy to the person who caused this to happen. Now, clairvoyants, or people who can see and perceive subtle energies and auras, they'll tell you they perceive subtle energy cords that extend from one person to you. They usually hook into your chakras or sometimes into your internal organs, and they create a flow of energy back and forth with the other person. And the nature of the energy that travels back and forth through these cords is determined by the kind of relationship you have with that person and what the issues are or the emotional state of that other person. And I'll get into some more specific things to look out for as we go on. Basically, if you feel drained, triggered, worn out, or in any different emotional mood after you've been with a person that you were before being around them, this is a very good indication the person has energy vampire traits, and you have taken on some of their energy and formed a subtle energy connection with them. After spending time around an energy vampire, you may find yourself feeling chronically fatigued, depressed, anxious, or irritable. There was a person in my life years ago who did this to me for quite some time before I realized this person was the source of my anxiety. My body would feel nervous and anxious and even quiver a little bit. And I thought it was just me feeling stress. But I eventually figured out I only felt that way when I was with this person. So I put an end to that. So just hearing about this might make you angry or resentful of such people, but be aware that they're usually unaware of what they're doing to you. They just know that they like being around you. And while it's natural to feel upset or resentful toward energy vampires, I think it's important to understand that they often act unconsciously. Their behavior stems from deep seated wounds, emotional pain, rather than any deliberate intent to harm you. And so they develop these energy vampire traits because of their own insecurity and emotional wounds and areas where they feel there's lack in their life. And so they may have experienced rejection, abandonment, failures, loneliness, or feeling like there's something different about them and wrong with them, leaving them feel very insecure, unworthy, or unloved. And these inner needs lead them to unconsciously seek healing, peacefulness, and positive feelings and beliefs to validate themselves. So they use external energy sources to fill internal voids, often without understanding the impact that they have on those people around them. So they might have been hurt physically or emotionally. And so now, as a result, they're drawn to more healthy people. all in an attempt to soothe their inner pain. And they unconsciously are drawn to you as a possible source of healing them from their suffering, even if it's only temporary and only gives temporary relief. There are several different kinds of energy vampires. And I think it's helpful for you to know what to look for so that you can be aware of them, so you can learn how to limit your exposure to them and set some boundaries around these types of people. So I'm going to list five major types of energy vampires. The first is the victim or martyr vampire. And this type of energy vampire is probably the most common. These individuals perpetually blame other people for whatever their hardships are, and they tend to manipulate people through guilt. So they might lament how others or just life in general has wronged them. And just one thing after another seems to be going wrong and as if they're being punished for something. And so they lean heavily on you for emotional support. And they love to go on and on with their story to make you feel sorry for them. Stories about where they felt like they were taken advantage of, or whether something was taken from them, or whether they were harmed in some way. And the way they tell these stories can cause you to feel somewhat obligated to help fix their problems. It plays on your empathy and pulls on your heartstrings, and you want to reach out and help these people. But in the process of doing that, you are left emotionally drained. And you might even feel guilty because you didn't do enough. Now, victims and martyrs believe they suffer due to other people abusing them or taking advantage of them. And so as a result, they blame people, they complain about people, and they manipulate people to feel sorry for them and support them or even try to heal them. And they do that by trying to make you feel guilty for not doing enough. So the first type is the victim or the martyr vampire. The second type of vampire is the sociopathic vampire. This type lacks the ability to feel compassion or caring for others. And a lot of them are really smart, smart enough that they can mimic compassion. However, they themselves don't understand it and they don't feel it. But this can make them selfishly goal directed and very manipulative. They project their demands and expectations on you, and when you don't support them, they can turn on you in an instant. Many of them have very high intelligence. They might be extremely successful in business or whatever else they're doing. They have engaging personalities. They have leadership qualities, and all of that can engage you. But on the other hand, they can also undermine you and crush you emotionally. They can be charming and intelligent, but it's all primarily direct to self-serving, and they use you for their own selfish needs. They're users, and their emotionally detachment and their manipulative behavior can leave you feeling used and undermined and emotionally battered. The third type of energy vampire is the intimidating vampire. Intimidating vampires have a need to be in the spotlight. They like to be looked up to. They want to be admired. They want to be a center of attention. And these individuals crave admiration and dominance. They are often very outspoken, very opinionated, and even pushy. And their needs stem from deep insecurities and self-doubt. Now, they would never admit that because they cover that up with their outgoing, often domineering kind of a personality. That's right. So they can be very outgoing and extroverted, often to the point of being presumptuous and assertive with their strong opinion. And they can override you and overwhelm you with their outgoing personality, all in an attempt to gain your sympathy and support. Don't fall into their trap of trying to accommodate them. They will drain you. It's really best to avoid energy vampires, but sometimes it's necessary to be around them. And when they project their rigid opinions at you, let them know you don't agree with them. If you go along with them to be nice, you're going to encourage them and empower them to push on you even more. So, this particular type of energy vampire will sometimes use praise and flattery, and that can lead you to think that they really like you, but they're actually manipulating you or they're playing on your good intentions. The fourth type of energy vampire is the dramatic storyteller. Drama energy vampires thrive on creating and talking about problems. They are addicted to chaos and negativity. They constantly seek an audience for their stories of conflict, whether real or exaggerated. They create and share these exaggerated stories of hardship, seeking validation and emotional engagement. Their ability to put out all of this negativity can be somewhat contagious, and that can leave you feeling emotionally weighted down and negative and depressed. And these come from people who have deep wounds themselves, and they project the beliefs that they are disliked, they're not appreciated by others, or people reject them or repel them, and they want your sympathy and support. The negative energy that they generate tricks them by deluding them into believing that by complaining and blaming, they're actually doing something about a situation. And if you listen to their stories, they're going to conclude that you agree with them. And so they're going to want to tell you more. And then they'll often embellish the stories every time they tell it. And the stories might be engaging and interesting, but over time, you're going to realize that they're taking advantage of your time. They're taking advantage of you being polite and nice, and they'll keep telling you more stories, maybe even making up stories. Because these people are so negative, they can leave you feeling drained and down after being around them. If you find yourself around them, redirect the conversation toward more neutral or positive topics and limit the time that you're exposed to them if their negativity persists. The fifth type of energy vampire is the needy, time consuming vampire. These individuals genuinely need help, but they become overly reliant on others for emotional or practical support. Sometimes energy vampires can be innocently helpless, and they can be very needy people who genuinely need support, but they come to rely on you too much. It's certainly wonderful to help those that you need, that who have need and you care about, but it's also important that you encourage them to be self-sufficient, because if you reward their dependency, then they can become very quickly overwhelming, leaving you with very little energy for yourself. So you can end up depleting yourself, encouraging and supporting these people. Now, of course, you want to be compassionate and caring, but with these needy people, you need to find a balance so you don't become their sole source of strength. They need to be encouraged to find their own voice and empower themselves. So these are the five main types. And you probably recognize you've been around some of them, but these are the strongest and most obvious types of energy robbers. Many people who drain your energy or have a negative effect on you have much less obvious signs and symptoms. You might just think of them as average people, and yet you are affected by them. Dealing with energy vampires of all types requires that you have clear boundaries and intentional self care practices. I have a short audio program titled Psychic Self Defense, which has visualizations and audible and subliminal programs to help you clear negative energy. And as you dissolve negative energy around you, you'll naturally radiate more positive energy and light, and you'll be far less affected by these people. Now, consider these symptoms after you've been with someone and you find yourself feeling overwhelmed, stressed, physically ill with, say, headaches or bodily aches, mentally or physically exhausted, or you find that you are irritable, anxious, or even worried. Those are some of the main symptoms that indicate that you've been exposed to an energy vampire. Now, I just told you about five main types of energy vampires: the victim, sociopath, intimidator, dramatic storyteller, and the needy time consumer. But most energy vampires are not just in one category. Usually they have more than one characteristic. For instance, they often have an inflated ego and are very opinionated. So they like to get into debates and to argue with you. They can be aggressive or domineering. They hold on to resentment and project anger. Their lives are wrapped up in drama. They project blame and often complain. They need others to agree with them. And they are all master manipulators, utilizing guilt and sucking up your time. So basically, an energy vampire is any person who captures your attention and energy. Now, how do you deal with an energy vampire? First, you must set boundaries. It is not your role in life or your responsibility to stay around these people and have your energy drained. So you want to set a limit on the amount of your time and the amount of attention that you're going to give them. Limit your exposure to them unless there are some extenuating circumstances. You may have to become very assertive. You may have to be very blunt with them because they're usually very skillful at violating your boundaries. And if you let them, they will. So you must assertively communicate your limits, such as saying, look, I can only talk for 15 minutes right now. You want to be kind, of course, and maybe even sympathetic, but you've got to let them know that their stories tend to overwhelm you and you can only talk about their issues for a short time. And then you want to suggest they consider talking to a trained therapist. Someone may be better equipped to help them. The second way to deal with an energy vampire is to not let them trigger you. They sometimes purposely do things to get you to react emotionally. And then they feed off of your emotion. And then they're off and running with their stories. They're very skilled at finding your emotional buttons and they find a way to trigger you. If they can get you sucked into their stories, they'll continue dumping on you and pull you into the web of their complaints and into their misery. Stay calm, grounded, and neutral. If you know how to ground yourself, do it. I've covered this in other videos and audio programs. Recognize their behavior as a reflection of their inner struggle. It's not a personal attack against you. And you might need to remind yourself their behavior is a reflection of their wound. It is not your responsibility to fix them. You also want to keep in mind the fact that some of these people have legitimate psychological issues, such as narcissistic personality, megalomania, borderline personality disorder, sociopathy, clinical depression, schizophrenia, and a whole lot of others. And these people really could benefit from professional help, but they may be resistant to it. And so they look to you to be their source of strength. The third way to deal with energy vampire is number three, become a neutral listener. Now, if the energy vampire can get you challenged or defensive, they can then feed off of your negative energy. So encourage the energy vampire to do most of the talking. And you do that by asking questions, especially open-ended questions, such as why or how. So you want to get them talking and then gradually steer them to talk about more positive topics. While they're talking, you can continue your own uh, working on your own energy by pulling your aura into 18 inches and then strongly grounding yourself and asserting, I do not allow anyone else's energy to enter my space. I reject and repel all negative energy. I do not allow anyone else's energy to enter my space. I repel and reject all negative energy. The fourth way to deal with energy vampires is if you feel drained, there are some techniques that you can clear off the draining energy from the vampire. I found some of these to be very simple and yet very effective. The first one is to wash your hands after you've been with them, but you do that with a very specific intention to release any energy that you acquired from them into the water as the water's running over your hands. And you say the words, I release all this person's energy from me into the water. It's as simple as that. It works because subtle energies or emotional energy will will be bound to the water. And that's one reason why water is used in certain ceremonies, spiritual ceremonies. It's quite common, like baptism, for instance. It's symbolic, of course, but it also does have a positive effect on the energy. So emotional vampires usually leave some of their subtle energy on you after you've interacted with them. These are called thought forms, and they're composed of emotional content and the memories of the stories that they were telling you. So you might want to repeat this a few times if the encounter was very strongly draining on you. Next, I want to discuss with you if you yourself are an energy vampire and you haven't been sure of it or what to do about it. So now you've got a little bit better idea of whether this might be true or not. Energy vampires are often driven by core wounds and emotional pain. So pay attention to the feedback that you get from people around. If people tell you that you are intense or demanding or whining or complaining or negative, then there's some things you can do to address these tendencies. Negative experiences from your past can cause you to project on others or cling to them for support. But don't allow yourself to descend into self judgment, self criticism, self blame. If you think you may have been or are an energy vampire, do the following. First, you want to do is observe yourself. Do you tend to dominate conversations or talk over other people? Or are you comfortable allowing other people to talk about their interests? If you tend to dominate, practice expressing interest in others by asking them questions. People are going to find you a lot more interesting if you're asking them questions, and they'll want to be around you and then you can express your opinions about things. Secondly, practice self forgiveness and also having compassion on yourself for all that you've been through. The more love and acceptance you feel for yourself, the less you're going to try to get it from other people. In fact, the more fulfillment and healthy self acceptance you have, the more others are going to want to be around you. And they'll be fun to be around because they will also be helped. Three, energy vampires often need self understanding and guidance through the rough times that they've experienced. And this is where finding a supportive counselor or energy healer can be very helpful. It can be difficult, very difficult, to work through these patterns on your own. So you want to be willing to invest in yourself and take the step necessary to work with someone who's qualified to help you. With help, it can take a short time. Without help, it could take a lot longer. Your evolution is a journey, and it's certainly a journey that could take a lifetime or years. But with guidance and the right kind of guidance, you can make steady progress and everything can improve month by month. And you can accomplish in a matter of months or years, few years, but in other lifetimes or other ages might have well have taken all of that lifetime or many lifetimes just to make little incremental progress. So you want to take advantage of the education and the knowledge that you have available now in this lifetime and seek out people who know how to help and who can help you. Now, in conclusion, I just want to mention three audio programs that I have that are helpful in clearing negative energy that you might pick up from others. One is called the Subtle Energy Neutralizer. And this, it's a guided process, like a guided meditation or a guided visualization. It contains 5 different techniques or unique clearing procedures, and they're very easy and everybody can do them. I also have a short psychic self-defense program, which has visualizations and audible and subliminal programs in it. And these are there to help clear you of negative energy. If you really want to get into more details, I also have an advanced intuition training course. It has a lot more information and guidance. And you'll find all of these and much more on my website, jonathanparker.org. I have a lot of audio programs and advanced training courses on audio. There's a lot of articles, other videos, all for your empowerment and well being. Until we meet again, take care and stay in the light.